Welcome to today's episode of Nerds and Friends. Today we have author Elizabeth Morris with us. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, while we're waiting for our co-host to come and join, they're just running, we're running a few minutes early, but they'll be here shortly. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about your latest book so we can start promoting that first off on the podcast.
All right. So I have two books that are available for sale.
Oh, awesome.
And they're part of a series. They're part of the Blood of the Beast series.
Ooh, great title.
And this is my first one. This is Tiger's Blood.
I love that cover.
Yeah, I love it too. This is my first one. This is the third edition.
Nice.
But it's the first book. And this is the first edition of my second book, Rise of the Rebels.
Another great cover. You got good taste.
Yeah, I love tigers. They're my favorite animals.
That's awesome.
So my books are about a world called Totem. That's how it's pronounced. A lot of people mispronounce it. It's Totem.
Okay, I like it.
So the world Totem is full of creatures called Bloods who are half animal, half human shapeshifters.
Oh, cool.
And the rarest blood is the tiger blood. So, and it follows the story of a young girl who discovers she's a tiger blood, and she goes on a journey and to the lion blood kingdom. So,
wow. That sounds really cool.
Yep.
That's awesome. What's your protagonist's name?
Her name is Kira.
Oh, Kira, that's a great name. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, let's jump into my favorite question of the questions I have prepared for authors, just kind of as prompts, is if your protagonist, Kira, had to go on a road trip with the protagonist of the last book you read or TV show you watched, who would that be and how would it go?
Okay, so I'm trying to remember the last TV show I watched, but here's the book I'm reading. I can pull it up right here.
Oh, great.
This is the book I'm reading, and the protagonist of that book, right?
Yeah.
Of this book. So this is Elvira or Elara. Sorry. I haven't read it in like a few weeks. So I'm reading that. So she's Elara, and she's like a teenage knight, and she wants to be a knight. So I think she would kind of match well with Kira.
Yeah.
Because they're both kind of teenage and stubborn and like angry in their own ways, like teenage angst, and I think they would match well.
That's cool. Yeah, they'd probably get along well and have a lot in common, and
I think
go
they would
on
have
adventures together. Hey, Will.
Yeah.
His audio's connecting. Will, you're showing me up again, showing up with the jacket, looking all good. I'm just here in my Balrog t-shirt,
Well, I gotta say, the Balrog is the classiest of all of the I almost said League of Legends, Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Monsters.
Oh, well, thank you.
Especially by comparison to, like, the orcs.
True.
Like,
if I had an orc t-shirt, that'd be weird.
Very.
My weird orc t-shirt. That'd be...
Yeah.
Well, Will, this is Elizabeth Morris, the author of the Tiger's Blood series that's joining us today.
Mm-hmm.
And Elizabeth, this is Will Shaw, illustrator and artist of great skill and aplomb. We love having him on the podcast here.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So as always, for our viewers, I remind you to check out Will Shaw, that's SHAW art, on Instagram, so you can see all of his great works on there for sure.
Hold on, let me look him up.
Oh, cool.
Will Shaw.
Yeah.
Will Shaw, and then what?
Art.
Yeah.
Oh, found him. Okay. There you go. Just gave you a follow.
Oh, yeah. Super nice of you. Nice.
Yep.
Yeah. But we're here to talk about you, though.
I know.
Yes, we've been talking about the Tiger Blood series.
We've been talking about my books. These are my books right here. This is my first one. Yeah, this is my first one, Tiger's Blood, and then this is my second one, Rise of the Rebels, and I'm working on a series. It's called Blood of the Beast series, and I'm writing the third book currently. I just finished chapter 10, so.
That's awesome. How many books do you think are you going to have in your series total?
Probably 5.
5. Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
A quintuplet, quintet. I don't know. Quintet. I don't know.
Quintology.
Quintology. Yeah.
I was gonna say quintillion, but I'm pretty sure that's a different thing.
Yeah.
Carey DuVal's joining us from the Matrix today, looking very good.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Outside and staying mostly on mute because I am outside of a cafe in, let's say, Bavaria.
That's good.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if you take the door to your right, it should take you through to a train on Japan. That might be a little bit cozier.
So,
Yeah,
I have a question for you, Elizabeth. Do you fall into the more plotter category of writer or more of a pantser? Like, do you tend to plot out and outline your books, or do you tend to just kind of have an idea and just go with it, or what's kind of your style as a writer?
So I for sure am a plotter. I have to have an outline before I start writing my books. And usually what I'll do with my outline is I'll make a list of basic plot points on what I want to happen in the book, and then once I got the plot points written down, I'll go chapter by chapter and write like 1 to 2 paragraphs on what's going to happen in each chapter. That's kind of how my outlines work.
That's very similar to how I do my outlines. That's awesome. Yeah, it works really well because when you have, chapter by chapter laid out, you can just sit there and be like, I know the framework of my book. Now I just have to fill it in, and it's a really gratifying feeling.
Exactly. I'm like, awesome. I got the gist of it down. Now I just need to write like the in between, like in between the lines.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So with the you're expecting 5 books, was that always the plan, or has that just kind of where it ended up being after you've
originally I wanted to do a trilogy, but I felt like there was more to the story that needed to be told. And I said, I think 5 books is a good foundation to build everything that I want to build, and like build the characters, build the plots, build the settings of everything. And so I decided 5 books was probably the best option.
Nice. That's awesome.
And with your outlining style, how much of that is outlined up front? Do you have 5 books worth of outlines, paragraph per chapter outlines set up, or do you have the first book set up and then the rest of it is kind of a vague concept to see where it develops?
So for the outlines, I normally, once I finish a book, once it's done with editing, and once I get the cover and everything, once it's all published, then I'll start working on the next book. I tend to focus on one book at a time. So like when I'm focusing on right now, I only have the outlines for book 1, 2, and 3, because that's what because I have book 1 and 2 out, and working on book 3. So I do it one book at a time. I don't have book 4 or 5 planned out yet.
Nice. That's an awesome system. That's very cool. Let me pull up. I have more. Let's see. Oh yeah. When did you know that you wanted to become a writer?
That's a good question. So I started writing short stories in middle school, and I used to post them on Wattpad and Instagram, my old Instagram account. And my friends and family, they loved my short stories. And I think around that time when I was 13, 14, it was when I decided I want to write a book. So, and I knew I wanted to be a writer then. So I started plotting book 1 when I was 13.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So, yeah.
That's really cool. So this has been a work in progress for a while, building it up.
Oh, yeah.
That's really satisfying that it's published now. That's awesome.
Yeah. This is, I'm kind of glad. It's not a long book. It's only like 160 something pages, but it's mine. And I think it's an accomplishment either way.
Oh, that's awesome. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So I gotta ask,
something that's been percolating that long.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna ask actually.
He said something that's been percolating that long. It's got to be really satisfying that it came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was gonna ask actually is how much of that what you had plotted out when you were 13 actually survived to the final book. I know with the editing process, sometimes you got to be kind of vicious with making some changes. So, like, with everything that's happened over the years, how has that kind of evolved into it from what it was originally?
Yeah, so I actually started writing both my first two books on Wattpad. That's where I started writing everything, and then I transferred it to my laptop. And I changed and cut about probably 80% of what I wrote because it wasn't great. And once I really had the ideas for my first book, I actually, that's when I started making an outline, because when I was writing on Wattpad, I didn't have an outline. I just wrote. And but I'd say about like 80% of what I originally wrote was cut out. And I changed a lot in book one.
That's cool. That's what you got to do in that process. That's good that you were, I know it's sometimes you want to hold on to what you had initially and not let go of it. So that's really good. You're able to make it malleable and make it what you wanted it to be at the end,
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. Well, let's see. Yeah. Tell us about your favorite minor character in your story and why.
Ooh, so she comes in book two. Well, she's in book one, but she's more prevalent in book two. And her name is Leah. She's like the comic relief character.
Nice.
And she laughs at everything. She thinks everything is like funny to her, and she's just like, she's really immature in that sense, like laughing at serious stuff, and that's going on in the books. And always cracking jokes and stuff. So, and even my editor said she's shaping up to become his favorite character.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I think Leah is a really good side character.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it sounds like you have a spinoff series coming in your future.
Maybe not a spinoff, but I'm working on a prequel to my series.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I can ask on that. Sorry,
Go ahead.
Cutting you off again. If I can ask on that, what were your inspirations for your book and your story? Like, what made you want to tell the story that you told here with Tiger's Blood?
Yeah. So a lot of inspiration stems from people in my life and life experiences, and I base some of my characters off of some people in my life, which is kind of funny because some of the people in my life that I base my characters off of, I no longer talk to. So it's kind of, I still have like their voices in my head and their basic quirky personality traits. And so a lot of people in my life, and music is also a big inspiration. I tend to listen to music when I write. Nice. I'll just play a random playlist. I listen to a lot of Black Bear. I don't know if you know who that is, but
I don't actually. I'll check them out.
Black Bear is one of my biggest inspirations for music. I just love his style.
Cool.
So yeah, that's a music is an inspiration, and then just living life is an inspiration. I travel around a lot. Like nice. In the next few weeks, I'm going to Eastern Standard Time to visit my family, and then I'm going to Central Standard Time, and then back to Mountain Standard Time.
Nice.
So it's kind of I'm all over the place. So traveling a lot does help me get the creative juices flowing, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gives you those diverse experiences to actually kind of create out this relatable but diverse cast, I'm sure.
Yeah. For sure.
Speaking awesome. Of which, you said you have them in, like, you have the voices in your head. How much do you ever interact with the characters outside of the story? Just have a conversation with any of your
Yes, that has actually happened to me before, where I'm on a walk or I'm in the middle of doing something, and I just like hear my characters talking to me, and I'm like, and I'm like kind of having a mental conversation with them in my head, and they're like, it's kind of, I don't know why, but it's mostly my main character that I hear in my head. So I'll hear her like screaming, or like, why are you doing this, like blah 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 blah, I should be doing this and that, like you should be doing this. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Kind of hard to explain that situation.
Yeah. Well, I think especially when you're developing like different characters, you're putting, like, you're not just putting yourself in there. You have to kind of create that separate character to relate to.
Yeah.
Outside of just what you like. Do you have trouble like separating yourself out from the characters when you're actually writing?
Not normally. Sometimes it depends on the character and like how I'm feeling that day when I'm writing. Like Ethan, one of the main characters, is very difficult to write and very difficult to get in the head of, like, and I kind of, it's hard to understand his actions, his words. Like I still don't understand half the stuff that I've written down, what he's done. But like Ethan is a big one where that happens to me.
So is Ethan based on someone in your real life, and you're kind of thinking, what would that person do in this situation?
Yes, he's based off of my ex-boyfriend. But we ended on good terms. Nothing bad. We ended on good terms. But I don't really talk to him anymore. But sometimes I'm like, what would he do in this situation? And I just think of like our relationship, and I'm like, so what would he do in this situation? What would he do in this? And it's kind of hard to point out. But eventually I wrap my head around it and really get down to it. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, where your characters come from, and I'm curious, can you give us an overview of the plot, or what's the story? What's your book about? What situations do these characters get into?
So my books are about a world filled with creatures called Bloods. Everyone is a Blood, and they're half animal, half human shapeshifters. So they're like, you can shift into your form at any time, as long as you have. It's kind of like if you have enough energy to do it. Same as energy if you do going on a run or exercising, or I don't know, lifting weights. And so if you have enough energy, you can mutate into the whatever animal form you are. And a lot of the times, so there's a monarchy and kings and queens and all this stuff going on. And a lot of the times they get into situations where they're fighting, or they're talking to each other, and they're, you know, there's a lot of fighting, and I said fighting already. But so there's a lot of, the basis of it is like, if you're not a certain blood, like if you're not a lion, or if you're not a I don't know, a bird or a certain type of blood, then you're kind of looked down upon. There's a lot of racism involved in there in that sort of sense. A lot of the main character deals with a lot of hate, so there's a lot of that. That's kind of most of it. So.
And you were saying she's a tiger blood, right? So she has a special ability to mutate into a tiger, which is really cool.
Yes, that's the main character. She mutates. She's the rarest blood of them all, which is the tiger blood. So everyone kind of is like, "Ooh, who's this?" Like everyone is kind of wary of her. Like, is she dangerous? Is she gonna kill me? Like, blah blah blah. Everyone has these misconceptions about tiger bloods and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you got kind of that metaphor for that fear of the other and fear of this unknown working there.
Yes, for sure.
It's always an interesting story point. If you were going to give this to, like, if you met somebody on the street and you had like 2 minutes to pitch him on it, and he's like, this is why you should read my book, what would be like, what about your story is unique, and what would really sell somebody who's walking by it in a bookstore and says, that's a cool cover, I wonder what it's about?
So I guess 2-minute pitch. I would just say it has a lot of themes of acceptance and friendship, and just there's strong female characters. I know a lot of people like that. There's strong female characters, and there's like devious villains. I know a lot of people love the villains. I would try to pitch that. I would try and say, like, I want to try to say enough, but not too enough to get spoilers, but
yeah,
try to stay out of that. There's a lot of themes of like racism, kind of, with different bloods, different people and stuff. So I would try and just say what my book is about and stuff like that, and if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And if they pass it on, then that's fine. But I think my covers are pretty. I think
they're pretty eye gripping. Pretty eye gripping.
Yeah.
Some good art on there.
Yeah. I hired someone to do this, and he did a really good job. He envisioned exactly what I was thinking, so it was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like they have a lot of themes in that, adventure, social elements, and then is there some romance in the books as well?
There is a little bit of romance. I guess
nice.
a love triangle, sort of, kind of. But like it's kind of resolved by like the third book, so the love triangle, but it's still prevalent in book 1 and 2. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing from the earlier time zones that you are in North America, and like I know recently, and I certainly don't want to get political, that's not this show, but we've obviously had a ton of different types of like social unrest and racial tension. Did a lot of that feed into the book? Because it definitely sounds like there is a fair amount of talking about discrimination or dealing with discrimination. Was that kind of always present, like a point to make the book, or is that just kind of what is around you just feeding into the general plot?
I think it's a mixture of both, like what's going on, because it's always been like a center point of discrimination and just like discrimination, and but I think definitely like what's been happening politically in the world has influenced part of my books when I was writing them, because there's, especially in book 2, when I was writing book 2, because I just finished this a few years ago, so
nice.
I think 2 years ago, and when a lot of the influence of the second character, Skylar, who I haven't mentioned yet, she takes a lot of discrimination when she hasn't really been discriminated with previously, and she's like not getting used to it, but it's kind of new to her,
right?
And she is not really taking it well in book 2. So I'd say both is kind of a combination of both, like influence my own idea, well, not my own idea, but like just the basic trying to get my words together, my basic plot of discrimination and racism, and then what's going on in the world.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important to explore those difficult topics in literature and to show, just ways that how it affects characters and how toxic it is and how much better acceptance is. So that's really good that you include that in your book. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
What drove that as a central plot in your book? Like what made this such a special thing?
I just, I don't know. I just felt like I didn't feel like I was being discriminated against in any way, but or I didn't feel any of that. I just, I guess when I started writing my book, I had a dream about the main character Kira shape shifting into the tiger, and I just had the idea of what if she was like the last tiger and everyone was like fearful of her and discriminatory against her. I just thought that was like an interesting way to come about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. I just had that idea.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Fair enough. There was a story you needed to tell.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time. We really enjoyed having you on the podcast. This has been a great discussion, and we'll make sure that we email you afterwards so we can post all the links to your books in the description of the podcast so people can go check them out. But if you want to show us that artwork one last time for the viewers, I love it.
Yeah, this is book
great
1 and book 2. Yeah, awesome. I love them.
Speaking of which, where can we get those books if our audience is interested?
Thank you, Will. You beat me to it.
Yeah. So they are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can find them on Goodreads, anywhere that they sell books. And my first book has an audiobook that is out now. And nice. I'm working on getting the second book to the audiobook, but my guy is sick right now and he's healing from his voice. But but he's phenomenal in book 1, so I hired him again to do book 2. So
if you don't mind my asking, I just recently published my first book myself, and for the audiobook, what's kind of I went the self-publisher route. I was wondering, can you self-publish an audiobook, and if so, how do you do that?
You can actually. So as long as you my voice is terrible. I can't read my own stuff, but as long as you get someone who I think matches what you're trying to convey, like your voices in your books. Yeah. I would suggest looking on Upwork. There's this website called Upwork, and you can hire anything freelance, which is what I try to support. I try to support other freelance people, other indie stuff. So that's where I hired my audiobook guy. Nice. So look on Upwork and get a quality voice, and then they'll give you like a price range on how much it's going to cost. They usually do it like I'm going
to have Carey and Will do mine. These two have great voices. Yeah. I got them tapped already.
They usually charge you per however many hours they work on the audiobook. So like that's how it normally goes. But as long as the audio is like audible quality, like then it's the same thing as like Amazon. So like you'll upload the audio, and if they have any issues with it, then they'll let you know like the error code or whatever, and then you send it back to the audio guy and he'll like fix it.
Oh, cool.
So that's kind of how I went about doing it.
Nice. Because the tech side of that scares me, the editing part of saying, like, do you have to kind of break it up through like, okay, here's this chapter with this audio, and okay, so there's a more technical side to it.
Yeah, you have to do it chapter by chapter, and they do like a title reading. They'll read the title, author, and then narrated by so and so, and then they'll do the ending outro or whatever, and they'll do this was my book. This was my title of my book, written by blah blah blah, narrated by so and so. So that's how they'll do it, and then they'll do all the chapters in between, all the ones that you want.
Okay, so that's awesome.
It's pretty good.
Well, thank you for telling us all about that. That's super informative and helpful.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording, guys. Thanks for another great episode of Nerds and Friends.